everyone. I'd like to welcome you all very, very warmly to the British Chamber of Commerce's International Women's Day event. So I'm Sarah Batty, and I'm the Vice Chair, or a Vice Chair of the British Chamber and Chair of the People and Leadership Group who have organised this event tonight for you. Before we start the event, I'd just like to give a big shout out and thank you to our sponsor, Spurkis, who you can see up on screen at the moment, for their very generous support of this evening's event. So thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have also received apologies from Minister Paulette Lenert, who was going to contribute some opening remarks, but then unfortunately COVID-19 called. However, she sends her best wishes to everyone who is here tonight. So the theme for International Women's Day, in fact, there seem to be a couple of different themes. There's the United Nations theme, which is women in leadership, achieving an equal future in a COVID-19 world. And then there is internationalwomensday.com, whose logo is Choose to Challenge for this year. And so actually we're planning to look at both of these viewpoints tonight. Over the next 90 minutes, so we'll be going till about 8 o'clock this evening, you'll be hearing some very personal and some very inspiring insights from our speaker, Rajaa Mekouar, who I'll be introducing in a bit more detail in a moment. And you'll also be actively involved yourself in this event and have the opportunity to discuss how we can build on the successes of women to continue moving in the right direction and to continue challenging the status quo. So in fact, this is the first year that the Chamber is running their own International Women's Day event. And I think we've evolved a little bit over the last few years. So back in 2018, we signed up to My Pledge, which is an initiative by Equilibre, which some of you might know, to ensure that female speakers have visibility and are actually on the stage at public events. And the British Chamber has also partnered with the International Dual Career Network that helps expatriate spouses, both male and female actually, find employment in Luxembourg. And so we're really pleased to take the sort of next natural step to actually host an International Women's Day event ourselves also this year. The past year has really been very difficult for many of us in so many ways. And particularly for women, there have been lots of reports on how the pandemic has set back women's progress, with women often taking on the lion's share of housework and childcare, particularly in the work from home scenario that we have at the moment. And on the other hand, though, there have been some very visible successes as well by females around the world. And we felt that as a chamber, we want to help drive this conversation forward in a positive way, really to recognize and to celebrate the moments that despite all the challenges, women continue to make an impact and we continue to move more towards gender equality. And this evening, we're not on our own. We're very happy to be partnering with the network for this event tonight. And I'd really like to warmly welcome Louise Ashworth, the president of the network.
Hi, Sarah, and hello, everybody. Yes, I'm really honoured to be here, actually, to be representing the network and being able to discuss with the British Chamber on this very highly talked about and hot topic. The network's focus is very much on equality, diversity and inclusion. And we are always challenging this status quo as we strive, all of us, to create stronger platforms to advance our understanding as we strive for a gender equal society. And the network believes that by coming together with one voice, forming alliances with organisations such as the British Chamber, that we can make a difference. And the network is an international business professional women's association. And as this is International Women's Day, what better occasion than to join together with the professional associations such as the British Chamber.
Fantastic. Well, we're really pleased to have you by our side this evening.
But I'm very much looking forward as well to the breakout groups, and it's great as well to see so many of our network members here tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, as mentioned, we have a guest speaker with us tonight. That's Rajaa Mekouar, who's a private equity investor with 20 years of experience across Europe and the emerging markets, mostly based in London, but actually until recently, she was the head of private equity for a single family office based in Luxembourg. MBA from INSEAD, and if that weren't enough, she also speaks 5 languages: French, English, German, Spanish, and Arabic, and I'm sure Luxembourgish will be on the list before long as well.
Actually, I passed the exam, Sarah, I forgot.
Hooray! Then even more languages. So Rajaa's been so supportive of women in business. So for example, during her time at the helm of LPEA, she set up a mentoring program that aims to support women to develop a career in private equity. So we're really, really pleased to have her here with us this evening to share her thoughts on women's equality and what still needs to happen. So as Rajaa is speaking, please feel free to submit questions via the chat function. We will have time to take a look at them after the presentation. So with that, please join me in welcoming Rajaa to the virtual stage.
Thank you, Sarah, and everyone. I have to start with 2 comments to say, of course, that I'm very happy to be here, but also I'm very disappointed that there's so few men in the audience, which shows the extent of the work we still have to do. The objective for me by sharing my thoughts is not to be prescriptive in any way, but to share really a personal journey and maybe trigger some reactions from the audience. And that's why when I was asked to speak 20 minutes, I decided to cut it by half to allow 10 minutes out of the 20 to be dedicated to interacting with you, because I don't hold any magic science, but I've been around now for a little while, and also because my mindset has changed so much over the last 20 years, I wanted to share these insights. And what I wanted to start with, instead of boring you with the bio, because then Sarah already had it, is to say I'm really an accidental women promoter, because I'm not a feminist by definition. And actually right now, I'm a strong believer in the urgent need to do something and to do it for a long time. I'm a strong believer in men and women partnership across all dimensions of life. And when I look up at the women that I admire throughout my career, often they were backed by strong men. So when we say that behind every great man there's a woman, I want to say the same thing for the other way around. Another thing is, as I said, is I really came late to understanding why we need to rely on men as well to enhance success, whether professionally and or personally. And I'll share a couple of stories on that. And in fact, if I look back at my career, which started in 1995, it's only in 2006 that I realized there was a gap between men and women. I used to say to my older female colleagues or friends or whatever that they were dreaming, and there was no difference because I didn't grow up actually being aware of any gap. And although I did grow up in Morocco, this was something that hit me much later at age 32 when I was working for a private equity fund, and I found out that one of my colleagues had a much higher bonus than mine. So when I went to the boss to ask why, he said, well, because he's a man and he's got a family and you're a girl and you're single. I think that day for me made a big difference in how I started thinking about things. And in 2016, I won't go into the specific story, but I was 42. I had arrived recently in Luxembourg, and I realized the power of goodwill. And this is a notion that's been driving everything I do here, including with friends. The power of how far you can go with a little bit of goodwill and niceness is incredible in changing your own life, but also other people's. And I really didn't expect it, but at the LPA we founded this P for Women that Sarah mentioned, which led to some sort of award that we don't really care about here. But I think it showed me that if you carry a message that goes beyond you, you can go a long way. And in the end, nowadays, every day almost there's something going on between men and women. And I developed a radar that I'm happy to share with you in a bit. So this is my biography in terms of men, women, differences, or whatever you want to call this. You see my slides? Yes. So I was asked to speak, and I think you guys at British Chamber did a great job at speaking about something positive, women's successes in Luxembourg and in the world. And I'm very pleased to see that in Luxembourg, all the initiatives by Paper Jam and others have been going, I think, a long way. And the election of Michelle de Taille as the most influential woman or person in business is very soothing and comforting for those of us who care. If you look at the international side of things, you see here different pictures of inspiring or successful women, however you want to call them, on the screen, each with their different stories. Kamala Harris being one of the latest examples, and then closer to us a little bit in business, Christine Lagarde. And I want to know how many of you know the last lady with the glasses and the pink jacket, and I'm sure very few of you know who she is. But in terms of those who are in finance, it's a big deal. She's called Jen Fraser, and she's the first ever woman elected to be CEO of a Wall Street firm. She became officially the CEO of Citi on the 1st of March. And I think it's important to flag this because hopefully she will create precedent. The reason why I put all these women here is a simple fact that they are all in different areas, different sectors, different ages, different even eras. But I think they have one thing in common is they don't do what they do because of themselves or because they feel they're the best, but I think they carry a purpose that goes beyond their own persona. And I think in my case, that's how I got over the stress of speaking in public when I became more vocal with the LPA. And when I'm asked, how do you do it not to be stressed? Well, it's not about me, it's about what I want to achieve and a purpose that goes beyond my own little person. And I think all these women have that in them for sure. And I've been reading a lot of their interviews and personal stories, and they do have that. In terms of, so why are we here? Because if all these successes are happening, I think we still need to mark the day, and one day we will celebrate not needing this International Women's Day. And I want to quote here a lady that that makes me laugh, makes me cry, and makes me very inspired. She's called Helen Gurley Brown. She died a few years ago, but in the 60s, she published this scandalous book called Sex and the Single Girl, and it was a guide to how unmarried women had to carry themselves with men, which at the time was just a sensation. And I think she's the reason why I think we should still have this presentation and why I chose her. So I'll leave you with a small message from her. She was the Cosmo editor for many, many years, and she has quite a unique story. So if you want to read her bio, you'll have a great time as well, by the way. And there's a documentary about her life on YouTube.
And then finally, I believe they decided, as I knew all along, that men are not the total enemy. Once in a while they are, but the total enemy is you yourself for not getting off your duff and getting out there and doing the best you can. We haven't got time to go into what I mean by the best you can. Just get up and do something, and you do it as well as you can for a long time. Then maybe you get to be the best there is, and you open your flower shop or your nursery, or you write the book, or you do research, or you go to Wall Street. You get to be a hot shot, or you don't have to be a hot shot. You can just do something simpler, like start a little antique business. So work and love. And the feminists finally got it through their heads that I'm not the enemy, I'm one of them.
Yeah. So what this testimonial shows from Helen is that, first of all, this was in April 1996, so a whole generation ago. And you see that there in women's minds, this imposter syndrome, as well as what I call the shitty committee, and I'll tell you in a moment what it is, are very much still alive. And I think this is something that we should fight really hard. And it's not that we fight against men, as she mentions, but it's about ourselves. So just to illustrate shitty committees, for instance, when the British Chamber of Commerce approached me to be a speaker to them, like, why do they ask me? Why do I have more than others? So of course, if you see the, how can I say, the mirror effect of this is not to feel that you're better than anyone else, but you shouldn't think that you're worse than anyone else. And I think this is a big deal for women. And this lady who's been talking about it 25 years ago is still very much up to date. And I think this is why it is warranted to have a talk like tonight. So 25 years on, the reality is that the glass ceiling is still very much there. We showed all the examples of women who are very successful and who are making it. But if you look at the light blue dots on this index that was published in The Economist this week, you see that we are still far from parity. And thank you to the Scandi countries for being a bit better, as well as France, which imposed actually quotas. But in general, even in Switzerland, in Britain, in Germany, of course, Japan, South Korea, you see we're still far off. And this shows that there's a long way to go. We should also look at the progression, which is to some extent encouraging, but nowhere near enough. In Luxembourg, I've been doing a little bit of research just to check, because this country has an ambivalent image in terms of how it's treating women. Well, actually, constitutionally, we're very much equals of men. but extrapolating where we are today and where we want to get to, you see that it would take 2 or 3 generations to get to parity in this country. And this means that all these initiatives like the network are very much needed, and we are still only number 10 in Europe in terms of gender equality index. So putting all this together, and with my private equity background, what you see is the proof is in the pudding. We're not doing it for the fluff or to be nice. The IFC published in 2019 this report, which I encourage you all to read if you're in private equity, and it shows that despite the fact that it's proven that returns are enhanced by diversity, there's still way too few women at the top, leading private equity firms or portfolio companies, or much too few women receiving funding for their companies, be they startups or others. So I think there's a lot of work ahead of us. And if I had to doubt, the legitimacy of this, there's one thing that I want to flag is this. I'm sure all of you who've been working experienced this many times. And so today, the few men that are around may feel a little bit like this. And the importance of this symbol is that simply, if you don't see people a bit like you in a room or in a job or in a firm, well, you just don't feel like joining it. And that's why I feel women who are a bit older, like myself and some of you present today, we owe it to the younger generation to rise up to the challenge. And this is really why I decided to get involved, and this is why I accepted to speak tonight, because it's really for younger ladies, the millennials, but also girls who are still students. And some tell me, well, but the new generation, Generation Z, are not really so concerned about this. And as I was looking for statistics to prove this, but all the recent studies indicate otherwise. And now I'm just going to share for the last few minutes where I started. As I said, I told you a little bit about my bio as a kind of late acquired feminist. Well, really, I think in the end, what I tried to do after 20 years or so working is trying to remember my defining moments. What made me do what I do? And in my case for private equity, because my first job was at Procter & Gamble, far away from the finance world, is I fell in love with the idea that entrepreneurs change societies by innovating, by creating companies. And private equity is the job, I think, that allows to support them in the best possible way. The other thing I realize is there are gender biases everywhere amongst ourselves, but also within myself. I caught myself many times thinking in a meeting, oh, this girl is so attractive. Can she really have a good job in the firm? I mean, I'm exaggerating, but I want to make the point here that if you don't find well-meaning mentors who go beyond these biases, and I think I was not always very good at picking mentors, you can go a long way and faster and easier. And this is, of course, where education and background are very important. Last but not least, my starting point had to do with, actually, if I think back, every time I stumbled on an obstacle, the fact that I had the deep conviction helped me support my goal, however difficult the road was. And even when things didn't work out, I learned from it, and therefore it was not a mistake, it was more of a lesson. So I don't know if this can be guides for the younger women in the audience or for the older ones to share their own starting points and defining moments in the Q&A, but it helped me a lot, and it still does. And my personal journey, therefore, was like, as I grew more senior in my jobs, why do we need women in the finance industry? And I really bring this point home to men, because often they feel it's just a nice to have. And some women say, yeah, but I fought so hard. Why should I help others? And really, we need them because it's better for business and long-term value creation, not just short-term. Success, well, what is success? It's the theme today. When I was younger, I was always looking for role models, but honestly, I think you can only be your own role model, and I'm nobody's role model. I really try to always visualize what makes me fulfilled. How can I make what I want reality? And in my case, my success is to be independent, is to have a reputation that is untainted, and that if I have any legitimate position, I owe it to myself and not to a title or to a mentor or anyone else. The Shitty Committee, very clear, huh, ladies. I tell you, it's showing up now and then in my head all the time, and as long as you're aware of it, you can overcome it. But everything is about our belief in our abilities and not to question our legitimacy. Last but not least, in the end, you can get as much inspiration or motivation from someone, but if you don't work on yourself, you cannot make it. And that's something I had to do for myself over, I would say in the years 2000, when a lot of challenges showed up in my life. I did a lot of self-development in many different ways. And after a while, you just feel that, nothing can stop you. It doesn't mean you make everything that you try and everything is a success, but there's this kind of driving force that's coming from deep inside, which makes you go a much longer way. So in essence, and this is something then I'm going to illustrate because I don't feel fully legitimate for other reasons, there's three things I would like to share with you: that patience and passion from within are very important. And in this case, I want to speak to young moms. I mean, I don't have children myself, so I always feel limited in my ability to be a role model. But I think we should stop telling younger girls that they can do everything at once and very fast. I think compromises along the way and prioritizing over time. A career is long. Nowadays, you can work 40, 50 years in your life. It's a matter of choice. But if you keep your passion and show patience, you can make it. You can become whatever you want to be, as Helen said, but don't try to do it all at the same time. And I think this is a key thing to remember. Second is the networking. And I know when you have a family to manage and maybe a household plus a job, it's not easy, but really spending time with well-meaning people who can help is very important. In my case, and some of the audience today are present, we have a group of ladies who are welcoming men as well, where we just talk to each other, share tips, and even during these COVID times, actually was a great support work to be able to WhatsApp each other, send pictures, make fun of each other, share war stories. And I encourage you to do this in any shape or form. Last but not least, as you said, Sarah, there's been a lot of challenges going on in the last year, but I never think it's the end of the road. If you think out of the box and if you really try to find ways to go out of the beaten track, I can't see how you can fail. And these three combined, for me at least, work magic. And I discussed this with my close friends and the people I admire, and we all kind of came with this conclusion that these three factors combined take you anywhere you want. Because especially in Luxembourg, thank you to the network, to WIDE, all these initiatives that I've been looking at or talking to or whatever, and I'm sure I missed some, allow you to not feel alone, to not feel that you're at the end of the road, and always reach out to others. I think even if it's just to feel the burden, it goes a long way. What else goes a long way? Well, in the end, Helen, this is Helen again, she says that what separates successful people from the others is willingness to work very, very hard. And as you see, she doesn't first call herself a feminist, but she talks about people, she doesn't talk about women. So in the end, we should think as one kind of community of men and women together, and working hard, and this dedication, I think, is key. So for those of you who believe that this problem or this inequality is going to go away with Generation Z, perhaps, and there's some hope. And I know all the ladies I know who are raising kids are doing their best in this, and the men as well. But please keep the hard work, because I don't think we're out of the woods yet, to be honest. And that's why I say again, and the Economist, if you receive their espresso newsletter every morning, shows a quote. And today I love this quote by Addie Wyatt, who I actually didn't know, who was born on International Women's Day, and who says, whatever you do, don't do it alone. So, and I know a lot of my friends have felt very lonely the last year, but actually, if you reach out and even just to share or wine or whatever, it's there. And my motto, I mean, with the risk of shocking you, I said, what takes you a long way. This is also from Helen, Gurley Brown, that good girls go to heaven. And a lot of us were raised as to be a good girl. But I like to say that bad girls go everywhere. And everywhere doesn't mean that you have to be bad in a bad way. But bad girls mean, I guess, free spirits who believe in themselves and don't take no for an answer. I think I have to stop there, because as she says, and again, and I probably spoke more than 10 minutes, never fail to know that if you're doing all the talking, you're boring somebody. So thank you for this opportunity, and I hope I can meet all of you physically, and happy to answer a few questions in the next few minutes if you're up for it. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Rajaa. Gosh, that was packed with a ton of food for thought. I'm sure everybody had lots and lots and lots of tips to take away from that. I was sort of scribbling down questions as we were going. We do have a few questions come through. I think everybody can probably see them, but maybe I'll just start working through from the top. And Rajaa, if you're okay to give your thoughts on the questions. So the first question I've got up here is, what have your past experiences taught you, and how have you used the face challenges as a possible path for success? Can you comment on that?
Well, I think I touched upon it a bit, is the fact that a failure means nothing. It's what can you learn from it? What is the lesson that you derive from it? Why did it happen? And without questioning your own person, is to question maybe the way you did something, the reason why you did something. And if you stay with your purpose, you know, experiences all contribute to your future success. And for me, success is, you know, feeling fulfilled and feeling that, you know, I'm untouchable in terms of reputation and independence. But that's very personal. So once you have these things, you know, kind of crystal clear and crystallized, I don't think you can deviate from your journey.
Thank you. A magic wand question. If you had a magic wand and could change something particular in Luxembourg that would shift the balance, either business, financial, political, any of the glass ceilings which are cracked but far from shattered, where should we be leaning in to expedite a positive change on diversity issues? So where would you start, Rajaa?
Yeah, I'm going to try to shoot it from the hip. I would say two things. First is change Luxembourg's excruciatingly painful low-profile attitude, because, you know, having lived mostly in an Anglo-Saxon world, I think, you know, being able not to brag, but to talk very proudly about what you did would help a lot. And that applies particularly to women here, to have more of these amazing women I keep meeting in Luxembourg speak up, show their faces, not be afraid. It's not about, you know, showing off or putting yourself forward. It's about sharing what can work. And I think Luxembourg is not good at this yet. London is much better. New York is too good at it. And I think if Luxembourg combined less low profile with the substance they provide, we would go a very long way. And I think that's what motivated me to do what I've been doing here for a few years, because I'm shocked by how people are hiding and not wanting to show themselves. But every woman I meet is inspiring, and we owe it to the others and the young ones to show up more. So just get out there.
Just get out there. You make it sound so easy, Rajaa.
It's not easy, but again, if you go beyond yourself, you just find the strength, huh?
That is true. Do you have an advice for young females who are trying to decide what should come first, either family, motherhood, or career, personal development?
I think, young people? I said earlier, don't try to do it all at once. In my personal opinion, if you find Mr. Right, who you think can be a good father and a good husband, go for it, make a child, and then everything else will follow. Because a lot of my successful friends who have kids found a fantastically supportive man. And then if things change along the way, too bad. But don't try to do everything at once and be perfect, to be on top of everything. And then I think each woman has their personal choices at hand. Some working moms are happy to work and others prefer to stay at home. I think women should be more aware of the fact that they are free and everything's possible with compromises over time.
Thank you. Here's a really interesting question around limiting beliefs. So can you describe perhaps one of your limiting beliefs and how you tackled it? I think you touched on these things with the shitty committee and other things that you talked about. Maybe you can go.
The shitty committee is very present and all my friends have amazing stories to share. But I think for a very long time, I thought I couldn't have my own company. For a very long time, I thought it was too late to move countries and start again, because I moved here actually to get married, and I thought it's not possible to do something like this at age 40. It usually it's driven by education, by your cultural background, and by your personal experiences or traumas, if I may say. This is where I think we should all work on ourselves, whether, you know, using a shrink or a coach or books or meditation. I mean, all the friends around me that I learned from use all these tools, and this gets you a long way. And then talking to others and asking for feedback. I ask feedback from my friends regularly.
Super. Gosh, well, I hope everybody was taking lots of notes, because that, as I said, was a lot to remember and lots of very, very valuable tips and insights. So thank you for all of your questions. And thank you so much, Rajaa. I'm just looking at the last comments here. Everybody's very, very inspired by what you're saying.
And I hope I meet you in person, because trust me, nothing replaces the physical interaction. I just want to say we had a lunch with a few ladies that I find fantastic, powerful, full of fun and goodwilling today, and we were so energized by it. So please get us back together as soon as possible.
We will definitely do that. Thank you so much for being with us this evening and for all your insights and thoughts. We very much appreciate you taking time out to be with us this evening.
I hope you all meet soon. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Rajaa. Right, so now you've got lots of inspiration from Rajaa. Our next part of this evening is to get you all engaged and sort of to use your collective brains to think about how we can move forward in a positive way, how we can make changes in a variety of different areas. And to do that, we thought that we would like to walk you through a so-called appreciative inquiry workshop. And we were about to move all of you into meeting rooms. So we've got 7 different groups set up. We will randomly assign you to a room because we think that all the topics that we're going to be talking about are really interesting and important for everybody to think about. We're going to have workshops looking at female leadership, at well-being, managing relationships, including men in conversations and many more. And your facilitators in the room, who you will meet once you go into the room, who are members, all of the people in leadership group, plus Louise, who's obviously with the network. And they will walk you through this 3-step process with some very interesting questions, which I'm not going to give away here because you'll be hearing a lot about them in the rooms. So I wish you a lot of fun with that process. It's a very, very positive process. It's hopefully going to really engage you, get you thinking about building a better world together. And then we'll come back after about 45 minutes or so, 45 minutes or so, and hear then from the different groups before we wrap up. So with that, I would say, Becca, if you're ready to distribute everyone to the rooms and enjoy yourself.
I am. I will. Yep, I'll open all the rooms now. Good luck, everyone.
People, thank you very much. Discover what's already working well with respect to building female career paths. Now I have to read my own writing. That's a challenge. Nothing special for young people. We're seeing in many organizations 50-50 now, men and women joining, which is a great sign. What's working well is flex time, part-time, as well. The help that's being given to certain people to women to get back to work is also encouraging. Paternity leave is helping. That was something that there wasn't much of in the past, but there is now. If you do it well, you'll get on, was one of the contributions, which I liked. Women are now seeing the need to, listen to this, people. Women are now seeing the need to support other women.
Right.
Which is a positive.
Nice.
And the European Commission is getting more understanding about things. So we won't say who mentioned that. Second thing, dream. In an ideal world, what would women's career development look like? Well, it would look the same as men's. You would see women in all areas of the workplace, and you would see them particularly in top management. And that would be the metric by which you could work out whether it was working or not.
Great, 10 seconds.
Keep building the culture of acceptance of women and keep setting boundaries. Work smarter, not harder. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well done, Keith. Well, that sounds like you had really good insights there. Thank you. So who's next? Donald, go ahead.
Yes, I'm happy to go on. So I had also a lovely group, and a very inspiring group, I have to say. So I didn't have so much work to do. They did the work for me. So in terms of discovery, yes, we discovered that basically my topic of including men in the conversation, what was in the essence most important was the topic and the matter of the discussion, not the gender. So basically, if we have an interesting and professional topic, we're valuing expertise instead of valuing the gender or any other origin or any other discrimination types. So then in terms of the ideal word, yeah, basically there's no gender. We're all treated as a human being, and talent and skills are upfront, and not your gender, not where you were, not seeing someone as a man or a woman. So in terms of I would say habits, we have the problem of generations, and it will take several generations to really get rid of all this prejudice that we had in a patriarchal society. And back to solutions now. In terms of solutions, basically you have to be you need to be willing to change if you want to change. So first thing first, men has to start willing to start the discussion and to start to be. It's not a question of let them be included. It's for men to be there and to support and have their equal part in the society on a professional but also on a personal level, as we have seen recently in Luxembourg with, for instance, parental leave and men taking parental leave.
Right.
And
Donald,
last
one. Yep. Go ahead.
Last one, main word, education. So through education, we can basically ensure equality.
Great. Thank you. Really, really important topic as well, including men. Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
I saw three hands at the same time. Let's go from the right. Susanne, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Sarah. Well, we discussed the topic of personal development and looking at what is already working well. It was really interesting because the topic that evolved around this discussion was people finally had time over the last year, time to think, time to structure their time and do what is important to them, actually having time to reflect and putting in place a daily routine where women spoke about having the time to learn something new every day, putting that into their schedule, putting into their schedule time for themselves, putting into their schedule also time for important sport activities, social activities, as much as that was possible last year. So that really key thing for us, creating that time or now having that time because we're not commuting and we're at home and we're a bit more flexible, and then being able to focus on the things that are important for us and putting some action around that. So that was something that worked really well throughout the last year. What are some of the things that we can still work on or sort of dream about is what came out is that it's important to really understand your goal and where you want to go in terms of your personal development. We also discussed about reaching out to people, helping, getting their help to get out of the slump of last year, or having someone to challenge you, maybe a coach or good friend. And one thing was also came up is to remain open-minded and not set boundaries, to be able to try out new things, explore something new, try something new every day, and not being afraid of failure. So really being out there and engaging and trying new things, not setting boundaries, not being held back.
Great. You're out of time. Sorry.
Oh, okay. There you go.
But I think what I'm hearing was the importance of networks and really building them up and making sure that they're in place. Thanks, Susanne. And sorry to cut everyone off after 90 seconds, but the maths dictated that so that we can end on time for you. Right, Claudia, how about you next? So I can see you on the
So
screen.
what was working well, shared, so on the topic of family relationships and also personal home life, in couples, shared household chores, setting boundaries, communication, empathy, also the ability to embrace the nurturing element that women apparently have. Maybe some have, not all, I don't know. Recognizing strengths and weaknesses and utilizing them. In terms of self-awareness, breaking the habit of repeating our parents' behavior. I thought that was very, very poignant. So really stepping outside, thinking, what am I doing here? Do I know this from somewhere? Prioritizing personal time against work hours. And again, in terms of self-awareness, somebody said, I'm much more organized than I thought I would be. And I'm also much more at peace than I thought I would be. Compromise and alcohol apparently are the things, the universal tools that help well. Dream more time with the family in terms of what other people will be saying about me. People didn't really care, so that's also something good. But if they did care, then they would be spoken of as open-minded, kind, engaged, and passionate. Finding time for hobbies, and one of the signs that this would be achieved would that the vacuum would go away.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Design. Shared chores, a good cooperation between the couple, also soliciting outside help, getting a takeaway or a cleaner, spending more time with friends, and closing the laptop, switching off the phone, and communicating that also to the team, so that they know what to expect. Okay. And get out more, and join local activities like swimming club, etc. So be more engaged, be more part of society.
Super.
That's it.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you very much. Jill, do you want to go next? I can see you, and then Mary Lou afterwards. Is that all right? And then Andy and Lene after Mary Lou. Mary Louise.
Hi. So our topic was leadership, and we had examples of what was working well around the world with the world leaders during the pandemic. The women leaders seemed to come to the fore with the human touch, and the ones that did things well seemed to be authentic. They didn't try to fit into anybody else's view of what a leader should be. They just did what they thought. Dream, there were some lovely ideas of dreaming a world with no gender bias, no biased thinking. And I think Patricia mentioned she'd got a disabled friend who said, I dream of a day where competence will be seen before appearance, which we thought was a beautiful dream, and where differences will make us strong. So there's steps, the design to get to that. We thought it would start with the law. As Reading says, we don't like quotas, but we like what they do. And policies in work shouldn't be all geared to being female policies for remote working. So part-time should be available. I put my own timer on, and apparently I've run out of time already.
You can finish your thought. Go ahead.
So my thought is, if I can finish the slide. Right. Part-time work should be available to retain leaders, women leaders. We should choose our partners wisely. If we want to be good leaders, then we need good support.
And women should be more open to allowing men into their circles. So when they pick up children from school, for example, when men want to do that, then women should accept them. And finally, COVID has broken barriers so that remote working is now not just a women's issue.
Very true. Great. Thank you, Jill. So, Mary-Louise, would you share your thoughts?
Yes,
your group's thoughts?
Yeah, most definitely. So it's kind of, our topic was all about networking and all about how we can nurture our successful leadership as well within our networks. And we looked at, let me see, I've found all my notes again, about how networking is helping us to leverage our own success. How we're doing it is by attending events, and that we're looking as well that for some of us, actually, the online virtual events have actually helped with our own networking, because we are connecting with a more diverse audience and being able to expand our networks and not be afraid of actually networking and meeting new people, because breakout rooms have been a fantastic invention for us all, because when we are forced into a group rather than being looking for our own groups, and also bringing more men into the conversation. And what is also working for a lot, we were talking about tribes, about how we need networking for our own success. And we were all talking about how important it is to have a tribe, but it's all important as well for us to communicate and have lots of different environments in which we communicate and we network, that to grow not only our networks, but to grow ourselves. But it's very important for us all as well, for our own success, to have this very tight inner circle, to be able to support each other, to have women supporting women, that we have ambassadors who are putting us forward, and also to have ambassadors that we are also cheerlead leaders for each other. One of the other things that we also talked about was how do we communicating about networking with men to help them understand women's issues and integrate them into our networks as well. And with the dream of that, in an ideal world, that women going forward won't need to pull a chair to the table. The chair will already be at the table, and it's our networks that will allow us to sit at this table and that there will be no gap. And
can I stop you there, because we're out of time, unfortunately. I would love to continue. We have one more group, and Katerina, I saw you raised your hand, but can I take your question after Andrew? You didn't raise your hand. Okay. Right. That's good. So let's just talk about to the last group. That was Andrew and Lene who were facilitating that group. And then we will wrap up.
Good. I'll take that one, Sarah. Last but not least, but I'll try and be as quick as I can do. And given Keith's statement, I'm last in the dentist chair. So let's go quickly. This is about health, well-being, energy and stress. So we had a great conversation, many different points and great examples of how well-being and what it means to different people from around the world. So really some different contrasting stories, which was really interesting to see. So that really kind of underlined the question, what does well-being mean, and how important is it for people? So we saw different examples and discussed, in Luxembourg, there's many different examples of where companies have put down different sports clubs. So there's been a big emphasis on sports, some nutrition, but a lot to do with kind of yoga, running, everything outside of work, and even things such as planting trees. I think that gives people a chance to get together and discuss, not necessarily sporting, nutrition value, but actually in a common cause. So that's also helping with some well-being. And certainly in times of COVID, it's an even more important topic that's being discussed when people are at home in front of their screens, and certainly looking to ways to get together, which has been obviously very, very difficult, to make sure they keep their health, well-being and energy and stress optimal. from their working day. So I think what we would try to underline is really what's working well. And I think what was discussed is really leaders need to understand what do employees want. It's about trying to get the best employee engagement. But first of all, you need to understand not everyone wants to go running. Not everyone wants to plant trees. Not everyone wants to eat the best food. Everyone has a different priority. And that could mean that they just need some flexibility in how they work. So I think that was what we took a lot away from that, is really just to understand what the difference means, what works well, and how can each company look to do that. So really listening is probably one of the biggest points about what needs to change. People need to listen to what people want, and that's coming from I suppose from the bottom up, to make sure that they can adapt to their workplace, what needs to change. So the work can be done, and I think COVID has proven that it can be done in many different shapes and forms. Some people work better at night, some people work better in the morning, and some people have different priorities throughout the day, but it's shown that flexibility, the work can be completed. So I think that's what was the main points there.
Okay.
Work on the
You're out of time, Andy.
Sorry.
Do you want to wrap with the last, what's one thing that your team came up with to do as a next step?
The one thing I think was working on, I mean, as an employer, it's really from a leadership perspective to make sure they look at employees on the output. What can they do? They can get the work done, but how flexible they can do it is really determined by each employee. And they need to listen to how that can be managed.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So again, sorry for interrupting all the facilitators, but as you can see, we seem to have made it on time. And what struck me as you were all talking about what you were exploring in your groups is we can't do this alone, right? All of your teams, whatever the topic was, it was all about we're in this together, and we have to work together to find a way to move forward and to get the best out of the situation. So I hope that you've really enjoyed this evening. We had a great speaker with Rajaa, and thank you so much to all the facilitators from the P&L group for running through the appreciative inquiry questions. I think we've had some really good insights from that. Becca's just asked me to call out some other British Chamber events that we have coming up in the next few days. And before I do that, again, thank you very much to Brookis for sponsoring this event. Those of you who want to join other events with the British Chamber, we have tomorrow coming up BCC UK webinars. If you're interested in EU trade relations and specifically VAT implications, this is one for you. You can find all the details to sign up on the BCC website. Then on the 16th, there is our ambassador's last sustaining members briefing. He's going to be leaving in April, so that's the last chance if you're a sustaining member to speak to him about the future of EU-UK relations. On the 18th, we have an insurance industry post-COVID event coming up. And on the 24th, we have a legal update with our legal group talking about post-Brexit pandemic topics, including really interesting topics such as, can employers demand a COVID vaccine before people go back into the office? So I think that might actually be a very interesting one, even if you're not from the legal world. So with that, thank you so much. Thank you again to everyone for joining in and making this a really great event this evening for us all. And have a lovely evening. Good evening. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good evening.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Good evening, everyone.
Bye.